What's up? Welcome back. I'm George, and you're watching the Model Railroad Show. All right, today we're talking about understanding DCC versus DC, which one may be right for you, and a lot of that determines upon what you really want to do or want out of the hobby. If you're going to, keep things very simple, I think DC, might work very well for you. And what is DC? DC stands for direct current, which is basically a transformer. And I have this very cool transformer here, antique from the 1950s, old Lewis Marks. But they haven't changed much, over the years. It's applying direct current to the tracks, and the amount of current that is applied will determine how fast your trains will run, and the direction in which it is applied will determine whether your trains are going to run forward or backward. All right. It's simple. And when we talk about DC, one of the pros of it is the fact that it's simple. The other huge pro of it is cost. If you're going to buy a train that doesn't have a decoder, that locomotive is going to be cheaper. A DC power pack, again, this isn't new or breaking technology. These things are relatively cheaper. This is an antique, and to give you an idea, you could pick one of these babies up on eBay for about $10. Not that I would recommend running your new trains with this, but it's they are much cheaper. There's really fewer components to it to troubleshoot. That's the big thing. It's like, all right, my train's not moving. All right, is my train on the tracks correctly? Are the wires connected to the track? Is the power pack plugged in? I mean, how much is there? Is the track clean? And that's basically where you're at with troubleshooting. Super, super simple. So that being said, it seems like it's all upside, right? What are the downsides? So the downside is if you have a loop of track with a siding, for the most part, if you have that all wired into one block, which means continuously with no isolators, that means that you can only run one train per time. If you put two trains on the track, they will both run at whatever their gear speed is for the amount of current that's being applied to the tracks. So if you're going to wire a DC layout, you would have to wire it in what we've traditionally called blocks, where you would have a block of track, that's connected to a switch, and then you would turn that switch on and off to control the power going to those tracks from your power pack, and that's how a train would move. So really, you have limited control over the trains is, I think, the best way to describe that. And again, expanding your layout is basically what I just said about the blocks. If you want to expand and have a bigger layout, I mean, if you had a passenger station and you had, four passenger tracks, and each one of those had an engine on it, each one of those passenger tracks would have to be, wired separately to its own switch. And then if you had those running out into a major loop, you could possibly have that loop wired in as one thing. But then when you could only run one train in that loop, and when you brought it back to the station, you would then have to turn that track off, and to run the next train, turn that track on, and etc., if you could see what I mean. That brings us to kind of where we are today in model railroad technology, which is digital command control, or DCC. And essentially what digital command control is it's applying a current to the track for, lack of drawing out waveforms, but each train has a decoder or a chip in it. And then that chip will be wired to your engine and will receive commands from your command station, which I have here. All right. And those commands can control speed. You can now control lighting, sound, direction. You can control such things as rate of acceleration, rate of deceleration, how long it takes for a train to stop from the time you apply the brake. And really, things have gotten endless. All of your sound. When we get into looking at some of the Broadway limited engines they have passenger station chatter, yard chatter, all kinds of things that you can then control. If you're dealing in a larger scale like HO, you can turn your ditch lights on and off. You can make them flash. You can, on all scales, turn all of your lighting on and off. It's very neat, and the sound does get in depth. And although I have a love-hate relationship with sound locomotives, it can be very, very cool. That being said, it sounds more complicated, and in some ways it is, and in some ways it isn't. The wiring is basically, there's no blocks anymore because each train is getting its own signal. You can have your layout, a small layout. You can have one power bus that goes all the way around the layout, and then feeders that go to the track. Okay. And we can talk about like that kind of wiring for DCC in a little later video, but it's easier to have expansion. All right, it's much easier to expand a layout. The wiring does take, a little bit of thinking through, because where you have turnouts, you need to insulate your turnouts properly. Where you have a reversing section, you need to have the reversing section wired properly. So there are some caveats with the wiring, but all in all, so much simpler than if you had a standard DC layout where every section you had blocks and switches and everything else. The other cool thing about DCC is if you have turnouts switches on your layout, you can have those attached to decoders, and you can control your turnouts from your throttle. You can also control signaling from the throttle. So there's a lot of options that can go into into the DCC. It allows you to have computer control where you can run your layout from your laptop. It seems like the possibilities are endless. The problem that people run into when they're making this initial decision is cost. All right, you're gonna pay. I mean, sometimes I think with the starter sets, almost $100 more for a simple starter set that has a DCC locomotive and controller in it. So the upfront cost, if you're converting and you had an old DC system, you're gonna have to upgrade your locomotives with a DCC decoders, which is, again, not the end of the world. But the other thing is there's a learning curve, and there's a learning curve in programming decoders and troubleshooting decoders. And sometimes, why isn't my train running, becomes a little bit more complicated. I have a Broadway limited locomotive where if it loses power too many times, if it goes over a dirty switch and then maybe hits another dirty switch, it doesn't know what to do, and it almost has this short protection inside it, so you have to reset the decoder. Little things like that. To me, all of that is worth the advantages of having DCC. To me personally, this is a simple Digitrax Zephyr controller that I have here, and this is the power pack and the throttle control and your brake, everything here in one package. I'll leave a link down below. The only link I could find on Amazon is for about $260. You can go check that link out, see more of the specs on this that are there. I would probably recommend, and some things, I'll leave a lot of Amazon links down below. Sometimes Amazon, there is an advantage to buying off of Amazon, and sometimes there isn't. If you have a local hobby store, you're probably going to pick this same Digitrax DCS50 up for right around like $190 instead of the $260. What I would be cautious about, and as always buying on the internet, is if you see somebody who has it for like, a private store has it for like $199, and then they want to charge you $20 or $30 shipping, then you start to, may as well buy it off Amazon. I got my free shipping anyway. But I would say check out your local hobby store, and they're also a great resource for Digitrax. Cool thing also is I have here my DT602, which is the wireless controller that I use on my layout. This has two control knobs up top here. I can run two individual, completely separate trains here. Select locomotives. There's nothing that this doesn't do. It does eat some batteries. This does have 3 AA batteries in the back. But it does have good power management. It shuts off mostly inopportune times, but still good power management. And it's got a tether that I can hang from almost anywhere. The other neat thing about DCC is there's a Wi-Fi add-on, and I'll leave the link down below for the Wi-Fi add-on, because that is not a bad buy on the on Amazon, where You basically plug in the Wi-Fi module into one of these plugs in the back here, into these LocoNet plugs, and then you can use your phone, you can use an iPad, you can use anything that can connect to the Wi-Fi as long as you have an app downloaded. I use WeThrottle, and there are free versions of those apps. So as long as you have that, you don't even need a throttle. You can use your phone. Is it as good as a throttle? No, but it's, you know, it's a lot cheaper than a throttle because you already own a phone. So DCC, I think that's about it. I think I covered everything there of, you know, the pros and cons. Let me know where you're at and let me know if this helped you with your decision at all, really. On a budget, DC is better. I got to tell you, running multiple trains, growing a layout, DCC is king. Like realism in operation, DCC is king. Hate complex wiring, really still DCC. But if you're just going to run trains in a circle and that's going to be your, you know, how you enjoy the hobby, then there might not be a reason to spend a lot of money on a DCC system. All right. So that's about it. Let me know what you thought of the video. Hit that subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up. Ring the bell so that you know when new stuff is uploaded. And thank you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.